was the young online phenom named Tom Dwan who went as Durrrr.
He's clearly under the supervision of the NHS here in Middlesex, just outside of London.
At first glance, he seemed like just another lucky kid. A skinny teenager glued to a screen, clicking away on an online poker site. But behind the name Durrrr was a cold-blooded strategist. While the old-school pros laughed him off, he was quietly studying the game, setting traps, and stacking chips. It didn't take long before the kid they ignored started dishing out six-figure beatdowns. And by the time they realized he was the real deal, he'd already flipped the poker world on its head. This is the wild story of how Tom Dwan rose to the top. Tom Dwan, born and raised in Edison, New Jersey, had a pretty normal childhood in a town of about 100,000 people. As an only child, he was outgoing and full of energy, dabbling in sports like basketball, baseball, and soccer. But nothing really lit a fire in him until cards came into the picture. Growing up, he'd often play with family, but the real turning point came when he and a friend tried a $5 no-limit hold'em tournament. That one little game flipped a switch. Suddenly, they were hosting sit-and-goes and getting everyone involved. Then came a rainy day discovery, Empire Poker. It was a free online poker site, and it totally hooked Dwan. Hungry to play for real money, he convinced his dad to stake him $50 and threw in his Christmas cash to get started on Paradise Poker. At first, he nearly busted, dropping down to just $15, but he clawed his way back up, grinding $6 sit-and-goes until he hit $300. That's when he jumped into cash games and remembered the thrill of making his first $100 in a day, playing 50 cents. From there, things escalated quickly. Dwan moved to PokerStars and started multi-tabling, $2 to $4 and $3 to $6 no-limit hold'em. By the end of high school, while his parents were urging him to get a summer job, he had already turned his tiny bankroll into $10,000. So instead of clocking into a 9-to-5, he rented a beach house with friends and headed to Boston University to study engineering. But poker was where his heart and his time really went. While his classmates were worrying about homework, Dwan was riding the roller coaster of winning and losing, more in one session than they'd make in a year. He once said he ran his bankroll up to $150K, then lost 50 or 60K just like that. And that's when it hit him. He was flunking out of college, so he made a choice. He dropped out and went all in on poker. He started playing under the name Durrrr. Yeah, seriously. It was an inside joke with his friends, something they'd say when someone did something dumb. He thought it was hilarious and maybe just annoying enough to tilt his opponents online. And man, once he hit the virtual felt, he dominated. Especially on Full Tilt Poker, that was the battleground for the big boys. He played fearless, aggressive, and sharp as ever, going head-to-head with poker giants like Phil Ivey, Patrick Antonius, and Victor Blum in nosebleed stakes games.
At 19, he made a splash with a 12th place finish at the European Poker Tour in London. And even though US tournaments were off limits due to his age, he focused on crushing online cash games. Along the way, he met David Benefield, and the two became tight, traveling the world for poker. In 2006, they weren't even old enough to drink, but they rented a house in Fort Worth, Texas, a full-on poker and party pad, where Dwan locked in on his game, learning fast and fixing leaks. Dwan wasn't just a talented player, he was relentless. He played heads up against the best, took losses on the chin, regrouped, and came back even stronger. He'd face someone like Prahlad Friedman daily, and if he lost, he'd take a break, earn the money back, and come right back at him. That grind and mindset helped him skyrocket through the stakes. Within a year, he was playing $200 to $400 games, even though he wasn't fully bankrolled for them. But he wasn't just holding his own. He was crushing it. Then came the crash. Just before the 2007 World Series of Poker, Dwan was riding high with a $3 million bankroll. But in a brutal 4-month downswing, he lost over $2 million. It was a gut punch. He called it really rough, admitting he thought it would take a decade to recover that kind of money doing anything else. But this is where Dwan showed what made him different. At just 20 years old, with 2/3 of his bankroll gone, he didn't quit. He dropped down in stakes, back to $25, $50, and started grinding his way up again. As he put it, there wasn't another option. It was either fight his way back or put the rest in the bank and flip burgers at McDonald's. And let's be real, grinding it out definitely sounded like more fun. On July 30th, 2007, just after the WSOP main event wrapped up, Dwan finally turned 21, and he was more than ready to hit the live poker scene in the US. It didn't take long for him to make waves. He wasted no time making waves on the live scene, final tabling the WPT
cashing deep at the Aussie millions and proving he wasn't just a one-format wonder. At his first WSOP in 2008, Dwan showed he could handle more than Texas Hold'em, diving into mixed games and making DO runs across multiple formats. But the real fireworks came at the 2008 NBC National Heads-Up Poker Championship. In the very first round, Dwan was matched against Phil Hellmuth. What followed became poker legend. In just 3 hands, Hellmuth was eliminated, despite having pocket aces against Dwan's pocket tens and holding over 90% equity after the flop. Dwan hit a miracle 10 on the turn. Hellmuth exploded, criticizing Dwan's play, but the result spoke for itself. The poker world had a new anti-hero. By this point, Dwan's reputation was exploding. So many players were avoiding him that he had to settle for prearranged heads-up matches. And in true Dwan fashion, he took that to another level with the now infamous Durrrr challenge. In 2009, he dared anyone, except Phil Galfond, to take him on in 50,000 hands of $200, $400 plus stakes, no limit hold'em, or pot limit Omaha. If they beat him by even $1, he'd pay them $1.5 million. If he won, they owed him $500,000. 3 pros stepped up: Patrick Antonius, Phil Ivey, and Daniel Jungleman 12 Cates. Antonius went first, but after 39,000 hands and a $2 million deficit, he bowed out. Then came Daniel Jungleman 12 Cates. That challenge still isn't finished. Over a decade later, only 19,000 hands have been played, and Cates is up $1.2 million. Dwan has been penalized for delays, and Doug Polk once called it one of the biggest scams in poker history. Meanwhile, Dwan also kicked off the $1 Million Challenge live from Les Ambassadeurs Club in London, televised on Sky Sports. Players like Marcello Merigliano, Ilari Sahamias, and Sammy George took him on in 500-hand matches with $250,000 buy-ins. The games were wild. Dwan lost to Merigliano, beat Sahamias for $68,000, and pulled off an iconic bluff against George with 7-2, convincing him to fold 2 pair. That hand alone earned Dwan legendary status, and he walked away from the 3 matches nearly $800,000 richer. But late 2009 hit Dwan like a freight train. He dropped $2 million to Phil Ivey, then got crushed by Victor Isildur One Blom for another $5 million. For a minute, it looked like he might be out of the game. But 2010 flipped the script. In just 2 weeks that April, he banked $1.6 million, then went on a ridiculous heater, pulling in another $7.3 million, including a $1.6 million smackdown of Sahamias. By the end of the month, he was all the way back. And that's when the bracelet chase kicked off and had the whole poker world holding its breath. The 2010 World Series of Poker was already buzzing, but event number 10, a $1,500 no-limit hold'em tournament, cranked the energy through the roof. Why? Because nearly the entire high-stakes poker community was riding on one outcome: Tom Dwan not winning a bracelet. At just 23 years old, Dwan was better known for his dominance in nosebleed stakes cash games, not tournaments. Yet here he was in the thick of WSOP action, with millions riding on whether or not he could pull off a bracelet win. The bets were outrageous. Players were offering 3-to-1 odds, confident he wouldn't get it done. Dwan never revealed exactly how much he stood to win, only calling it a potential best day ever. But fellow pros estimated his upside anywhere between $5 million and $12 million, and it wasn't just hype. Dwan went on an insane run, outlasting 2,561 players and reaching heads-up play against New Zealand's Simon Watt. He entered the final table as chip leader, and the rail was packed, not just with fans, but with pros who had big money on the line. For them, it wasn't just a final table, it was a sweat session worth millions. But in classic Dwan fashion, the drama ramped up fast. After a massive failed bluff crippled his stack, he made a desperate shove with Queen 6. Watt, sitting comfortably with pocket 9s, made the call, and that was that. Dwan was out, and a wave of relief swept through the high-stakes community. Simon Watt, a 27-year-old software developer with just one fan in the audience, pulled off a huge upset and earned $614,248, his first ever WSOP cash. Meanwhile, Dwan walked away with $381,885, which in his world was small potatoes. Still, despite the loss, Dwan's performance turned him into the unofficial star of the 2010 WSOP. His aggressive, unpredictable style, built around blockers, pre-flop pressure, and disciplined folds, had fans and pros alike glued to every hand. And even though he fell short of a bracelet that summer, his mere presence had shifted the entire atmosphere of the series. By the time 2011 rolled around, Dwan was flying high at the World Series of Poker. He cashed 3 times and even snagged a 5th-place finish in the 10K Horse Championship, pocketing over 134K. But then, boom, poker's Black Friday hit. And just like that, Dwan practically vanished. And when someone like Durrrr disappears, the internet loses its mind. Suddenly, rumors were flying everywhere. Some said he was broke. Others swore he was being held hostage in Macau, dodging billionaire gamblers. It got so crazy, people were even whispering he was being forced to play poker for the triads. But of course, none of that was ever confirmed. In fact, several fellow pros shut the rumors down, saying Dwan was still thriving, just out of the public eye, and knee-deep in ultra-lucrative cash games in Macau. These weren't your average Friday night poker sessions. We're talking multi-million-dollar pots with Asian business tycoons who played for the thrill, not the paycheck. According to Dan Cates, Dwan once lost a jaw-dropping $20 million in a single hand, proof of just how insane the stakes were. During this time, Dwan became close with Paul Phua, the Malaysian businessman behind the Triton Poker Tour and a major figure in high-stakes circles. Their friendship drew more attention in 2014 when Phua was arrested for allegedly running an illegal betting ring. Dwan even helped post bail, further fueling the conspiracy theories. Despite the noise, Phua was later acquitted, and nothing ever stuck to Dwan. By 2016, Dwan had faded from the WSOP but popped back up at the Triton Super High Roller Series in Manila. Then in 2017, he resurfaced at the Macau Billionaires Poker Spring Challenge. Although he hadn't played a live tournament for a while, Dwan still finished runner-up and pocketed $275,000. Fast forward to May 2023. Dwan made history on Hustler Casino Live's $1 Million game, facing off against Wesley Fay in one of poker's most expensive televised hands ever. The pot ballooned past $3.1 million, and Dwan, cool as ever, revealed pocket queens to seal the win after a massive bluff attempt by Wesley. The hand was a roller coaster, full of suspense, slow plays, and a perfectly timed all-in call. Just a few months later, Dwan returned for another big moment on Hustler Casino Live, this time in a pot limit Omaha clash. He and Marius both landed straight draws, went all in, and agreed to run it twice. They ended up chopping the pot, but the real drama was in the lead-up, especially Marius's agonizing decision and Dwan's icy confidence. Then came the 2024 WSOP main event. And finally, after 13 years, Dwan notched his first ever main event cash. He built his stack past the million chip mark before busting on day 4, but it was clear the fire was still there. Tom Dwan's legacy is undeniable. Known as Durrrr in the online world, he conquered Full Tilt's toughest games and held his own against legends like Phil Ivey, Patrick Antonius, and Victor Blum. He's one of the few players to dominate both online and live poker at the highest levels. Whether in Las Vegas, Macau, or on late-night poker streams, Dwan's name still carries weight. And the story of his rise, disappearance, and epic return is nothing short of legendary.